Greetings, friends and One players all over the world. I hope we find you safe and well. Welcome into the One Play Sports Spectrum, where I'm delighted to be able to induct another top athlete into our One Play Wall of Fame, following hot on the heels of chatting to PV Sindhu earlier this month. I'm delighted to be able to cross live to Kolkata in West Bengal and say a very good afternoon to Saurav Ghosal. Saurav, great to have you with us. I hope you are safe and well.
Yeah, I'm doing well, Patrick. Thank you so much for having me with you.
Now, first things first, Saurav, obviously everyone knows you as India's leading light in squash, currently world number 13, the first Indian to break the top 10, the first squash player to pick up that prestigious Arjuna award as well. But it's such a shame. We hope it's not for much longer. We have to start not by talking about sport, but by talking about COVID-19. How are things there in Kolkata at the moment?
So I think we've done all right up to this point compared to the rest of the country with the big cities. So luckily for us, the squash clubs are open. They opened at the end of June, and I've been kind of back on court doing like solo work for the last 2 weeks. But unfortunately, the cases are rising now. I think we had our first day of about plus 2,000 cases in the state 2 days back. So we're bracing for a surge in cases. And, it's just a question of hoping at this point that, the government can contain it to the best to its ability, because it's very, very difficult with the density of population that India has and the number of people that we have to really contain it well. But we are hoping for the best. I think all the frontline workers, the doctors, I think they're all doing a fantastic job to the best of their abilities. And as citizens, we're just trying to support them as best we can.
Yeah, we echo those sentiments, of course, from all of us here at One Play Sports in Singapore and indeed our One Play Sports team in India. We wish you all the best there in Calcutta. And you touched upon it there. I suppose the next question is, as an athlete that's used to travelling around the world plying your trade on a squash court, how has it impacted your daily routine? Obviously, you've now got access to a squash court again, but we're now talking about 3 or 4 months of inactivity for you. How have you coped?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I don't think I've been in the same city for this long, let alone being at home for this long. So it's like a shock to the system. But I think what we've tried to do over the last 4 months is we've not had access to any equipment in terms of like weights and stationary bikes and rowers and things like that. So we've tried to be creative, trying to, induct sessions where we are still trying to keep the difficulty levels up, doing different things, trying to keep it challenging as well as interesting. And I think we managed a decent mix of different sessions. And physically, I'm happy with where I'm at. Like you said, it's a blessing that we can get on the squash court in Calcutta right now. It's not the same in most of the other cities in India. So it's kind of the period now is just kind of getting back into it slowly. Not pushing the body too hard because it's not been in that stressful state for this amount of time. And in terms of like playing tournaments, yeah, I mean it's been difficult, because like you said, it's probably the maximum we ever have to train for so long is like 3 months in the year in the summer. And now we have like 4 months, 5 months, and we're not even sure when we're going to start again. So with no like end goal or tournament to train for, it kind of gets difficult on a few days, like motivation wise, as well as like understanding how to like structure training and things like that. But I think you have to kind of like focus 1 day, 1 week, 1 month at a time, and have like small goals to kind of hit to kind of keep you interested through this period. And that's what I've tried to do. And in a lot of ways, that's helped me. So I think that probably helped a lot of other people as well.
We've seen a lot of team sports come back. Obviously, football's come back around the world. There's even been some cricket in England within England and the West Indies. But they're obviously team sports where you have a big support structure around you. Mentally, because obviously in all these individual sports, a psychological angle is just so important. Mentally, how have you coped? I mean, obviously, your training centre is usually in England, in Yorkshire at Pontefract. So you've had to do back. Are you having daily Zoom sessions with your coaches? I mean, I'm assuming you work with psychologists through the season as well?
So I think it's about, at this point in time in my career, I think it's about understanding kind of small gains that we can make in my game. So we are focusing like on a weekly, bi-weekly basis to kind of understand areas on the physical side, the mental side, the squash technical side where we could possibly improve, and devising like sessions based on that, and then obviously revisiting those points, periodically through that. I think mentally, yes, it has been very hard, but by putting those kind of small goals in place, I think that's helped me to kind of focus on a daily basis more often than not. Of course, you get up on some days and you're thinking like, man, what am I training for right now? What do I do? And things like that. But I think overall, it's been pretty all right, and I've had a decent routine over the last 4 months, and I'm happy with the progress that I've made, and in the place, so to say, mentally and physically that I'm at this point in time.
Tell me, how did you get started in squash, Saurav? Because it's a prize, bearing in mind how popular squash is globally, recreationally. At a pro level, I mean, obviously, we'll talk about Egypt's dominance and obviously Pakistan before them in the 1980s. But what, as a youngster, I'm assuming it was at a very young age, made you pick up a squash racket and decide, this is the game I love and this is the game I want to take to the highest possible level I can?
So it's quite interesting, actually. So we used to live in Chennai till I was about 7 years old, and I used to play badminton there pretty seriously. And then we moved to Calcutta, and I started playing cricket seriously. And my dad used to play squash, and the reason I didn't play badminton was because I didn't have access to any facilities in Calcutta. But we had access to squash, and it being another racket sport, so I kind of started playing squash. And I played both the sports quite seriously, cricket and squash, till I was about 13. And as is normal, in India, academics are very important. And once I get into grade 9, it was very difficult to do two sports as well as focus on the academics. So I kind of had to choose. And it's weird. I think like it kind of shows, the game kind of chose me rather than me choosing the game in a lot of ways, because I think I realized that when I was on the squash court, whether I was playing with someone or whether I was doing like a solo session, I felt the happiest, in that 1 hour, 1.5 hours that I was in the club. It was the part of the day that I look forward to most. I still enjoy cricket. I still think it's a fantastic game. But I think there were other things as well. Like it was a team sport. I like the fact that squash is an individual sport and my destiny lies in my own hands, so to say. I think all those things kind of conspire to kind of make me choose squash, so to say, to take it up a little bit more seriously. But yeah, at 13, it wasn't that I'm going to turn professional. Like that was not even on the horizon. And India has not had like a rich tradition of professional squash players coming out of this country. So it wasn't something that, that was being fed to, juniors like me at that point in time anyways. It was just about, doing well on the national junior circuit and enjoying the game. And that's how it all started. And obviously, as the years went by, things took a different turn, a turn for the good. And here we are today.
I mean, you obviously have India. It's such a unique country in all measures, but sport in particular, because cricket leads the way, obviously, it blazes the trail. But to become a sporting icon outside of cricket, it seems to me, you need to have that marquee success. We obviously saw Sindhu win that brilliant World Championships in Switzerland. Mary Kom, she continues to break all kinds of records. You've had Vijender Singh win the Olympic medal in boxing also. I mean, it's slightly frustrating for you because squash doesn't have that Olympic status, which I will get on to later. What is the event that you think now you could win? Obviously, you had that British Open win in the juniors in your late teens. But what's your goal now to take your recognition in the country to the next level? What's the blue ribbon for you now?
I think because we're not in the Olympics, the Olympics would have been like the marquee moment for any squash player in the world. I think because we're not there in the Olympics, I think there are a few kind of holy grail achievements for squash. The World Championships, obviously, that's something that, you'll go down in the annals of history being world champion. That's something that's a dream for every top squash player. I think coming from India, winning an individual Commonwealth gold or an Asian Games individual gold is something which is huge because it's a multi-sport event and gives all the sports at that point in time. Every 4 years, a lot of recognition. So I think I would say those three things would be like top of the list in terms of my career that I'd want to achieve before I hang up my racket. Of course, there are things which you still want, like winning the British Open in the seniors. There are other World Series events, getting to world number one. But I think those three, if you had to pick like three red letter events to kind of really catapult your status and cement your legacy, I think those three events would be the one.
Well, you got that gold medal from Incheon in 2014 in the team competition, but am I right in thinking you had match ball in the singles in Incheon, didn't you, to win the gold medal in the singles? Is that right? I don't want to bring back any bad memories, but is that correct?
Yeah, I was 2-love up, and I had one match ball in the third as well, and unfortunately I lost. It's one of those matches which is very bittersweet because it's one of the best matches that I've been part of in my career. It's a match which I feel even today, after 5-6 years, that it's a match that neither of us, Abdullah Muzain from Kuwait is the guy who eventually won it, neither of us deserve to lose. I think both of us at that point in time probably played the best squash we could have played. And unfortunately for me, on that day, the dice rolled in his favor and he won. But winning that team gold was a redemption of sorts for me, because in the team event in the semis I played him again, and I won in 5 actually about 4 days later, and it was the dice rolled in my favor that day. And in the final, like when we beat Malaysia, like we weren't really supposed to win, we weren't favorites, but we pulled it through. And I remember playing, that it wasn't the decider. We were 1-0 up, but I went on second. And I knew like for us to win the third tie was going to be hard on paper. Of course, anything is possible, but Malaysia were definitely favorites for that. So for us to win, I kind of had to win. And I was running on empty because I'd been playing every single day for like 8 days. And physically I was empty, and mentally I was shot because of whatever had happened over the last week, and it was difficult to come back from it. And the team kind of carried me through that match. I remember the 5th game, like I come out after the 4th game and I'm telling all the players around me are telling me, do this, do that, you need to do this to win, and blah blah blah. And I look at them straight in their eyes and I'm like, guys, I literally have nothing left. Like, I'm not joking here, I'm done. And my best friend actually in life, he was 3 on the team, Harinder Sandhu, he just looked at me and he's like, man, you have 1 game, just do something. And I remember like literally in that entire game, every point, whenever before I served, I was looking out and I was looking at them and I was thinking like, okay, just push for them. I wasn't thinking about myself. I wasn't thinking about anything else. I was just like, okay, just push for them, push for them. And it worked for us. The dice rolled in our favor. I won 11-9 in the 5th. And for me, till date, that's my single biggest achievement, a single best memory of my squash career. And it's brilliant that we managed to do it. And I was so happy that we did it with the team we had.
I was going to say, is that the best feeling you've ever had on a squash court?
For sure. I mean, like, that is, it's also like background because, we had been very close before on a few occasions in the Asian Championships, even at the Asian Games in 2010, and we didn't manage to win. And, in that week as well, for me to lose the gold medal match in the individuals after being match ball up, and then coming back to, do that and win that for the team, it's, the whole thing, the whole amalgamation of emotions at that point in time, the crescendo of it. I don't think I've experienced anything close to that yet in my career.
Well, I can tell just from listening to you talk about it, what is it now, 6 years ago, but the emotions are still very raw inside you. Now, listen, we've mentioned the Olympics. I obviously, the arguments about squash not being the most television-friendly sport, I know there's been lots of innovations to try and put that right. I get that. But as a recreational squash player myself, can you answer me this? In Tokyo, what's supposed to be this year, now 2021, there's going to be skateboarding, climbing, baseball and surfing. Why do you think that even after all these years and the prestigious history of squash, it's never been an Olympic sport?
I mean, look, I don't think any of us have a clear-cut answer for that. I think we all believe that squash ticks all the boxes, so to say, of the Olympic ideals. of being an Olympic sport. I think as athletes, we are one of the best athletes in the world, and we deserve the platform of the Olympics to showcase what we're all about. But unfortunately, the frustrating bit is that the sports that get into the Olympics, or the selection criterion for the Olympics, is not as transparent as it should be. I think that is something that the IOC needs to look into. I think you need to have a very clear-cut understanding of what a sport needs to be to get into the Olympics. So even today, after about, 12, 14 years of trying very, very hard to get into the Olympics, I don't think everyone or anyone in the squash world really knows why we aren't in the Olympics yet. So even if you have a failed bid, you should know why you're not included. And I don't think we know that. And I think that's the most frustrating bit in the whole kind of scheme of things. So I think right now, a lot of us players have come to kind of this realization, and the kind of the mental standpoint that we have right now is that, look, we've tried really hard to get into the Olympics. We haven't. It's disappointing, sad, frustrating, all those emotions put together. So I think we need to focus on growing our sport organically as best we can. We have a fantastic sport that we play with a fantastic community which supports it. We need to grow that community, of course. We need to keep looking at the innovations, like you said, about TV, get it out to more people, and create value for the sport, so that that value attracts the Olympics to us rather than the other way around moving forward. So I think that's the hope, and that's the effort that the squash world is putting in at this point in time.
Yeah, well, I know our CEO at One Play Sports, Mohit Lalvani, is a big fan of racket sports and squash in particular. I believe there are plans in the coming months and years for us to be live streaming racket sports in India as well. So that's something to look forward to. And of course, on the Olympics, I think there's an argument as well that the host nations, even for these demonstration sports, have a say. And when you think after Tokyo, it's going to be France and Los Angeles, I think. France and America, not two countries at the moment you associate at the elite level with squash. And that kind of brings me on to the next thing I want to ask you about, because this, for me, is one of sport's great unexplained mysteries. Over half of the top 20 players in the men's, and similar situation in the women's rankings as we sit here now, are Egyptians. Why is it that Egypt has had a stranglehold of squash over the last decade?
I think there are quite a few reasons for it. I mean, to start, I think countries go through cycles. I think Australia had it at one point, England had it at one point, then Pakistan, and now obviously Egypt. I think they've had a very, very good generation of players starting about 10 years back, which kind of really, really took them to the next level. Egypt was always competitive in the sport, but not to the level that you're talking about right now. But they had this generation starting with Ahmed Barada and then Amr Shabana, who was the first world number one on the men's side, and that kind of catapulted it. And I think now it's come to a stage where it's almost like, if you're an Egyptian, you just believe you're going to beat everyone, that you cannot lose to someone other than an Egyptian. I think that kind of naive belief almost, which is not founded on any sort of like rational explanation, kind of carries them through a lot of their matches. And they've created this aura about themselves through that kind of culture, and then the number of kids that are playing there, the numbers are huge, and it's just growing from strength to strength. I think you can associate the same phenomenon in a few other sports as well, maybe. So I think maybe the Chinese, maybe in table tennis, you have the Kenyans in middle and long distance running, the Jamaicans in sprinting. So it's not all about, I don't believe it's all about, genes. I think it's all about, creating an environment in which people can thrive and realize their potential. And once you start the wheels start turning, it just needs small pushes to keep it going. And that's where Egypt is at this point in its evolution as a squash superpower.
Yeah, but what's incredible about that, and you make those very reasonable comparisons, Kenya with the long distance running, Jamaica with the sprinters, and China with the table tennis. But let's take the Chinese table tennis one to start with. The amount of money that's invested in making China a table tennis superpower is mind-blowing. as I understand it, and
Yeah.
you may correct me, there's no huge government finance or backing to the Egyptian squash players. And in some ways, maybe it's the insular situation they have there and the lack of government support that helps them, because there's a school of thought that says the reason why they're so good is they have a core group of 6 or 8 players that when they're not having competitions, they're playing each other because there's not that many courts out there. So they're all practicing with each other. So you've only got to get 3 or 4 elite level players and you breed more as a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think the government support is maybe as good as what it was earlier for the Egyptians. But I think there's a lot of like private clubs, and the private clubs support their players quite strongly. And in terms of like number of courts and number of players, they have more than any other country in the world today. The number of kids playing in each club is ridiculous. Like it's unbelievable, and all these kids are like training as hard as the top 10 players in the world. It's unbelievable. I remember going to Egypt like, I don't know, maybe 10 years back for an event in Alexandria, and we had just finished a practice session, and there was this, I don't know, maybe a girl who was like 6 or 7 years old, and the intensity with which she was training, like we were looking at each other and we were thinking like, man, if we did this when we were 6, 7, we probably wouldn't be playing squash right now because we'd be burnt out. But I think they've kind of internalized that intensity very, very well. I think they play with each other, like you said, all the top guys play with each other on a consistent basis. So they're pushing each other every single day, and that's very important. The training group is very important in any sport. And I also think like for the juniors to kind of like you're watching the best players in the world play live in front of you. So when you're like 10, 11, 12 years old, you can see how good you need to be world number 1. And there is no substitute for that education for anything in the world. Like you can watch a million videos, but you cannot see what goes on in the background when you're training, the work ethic, how people are, executing shots on a daily basis, what they're doing physically, things like that, which these juniors are seeing on a daily basis. And, that helps them immensely. I mean, on a small personal level, it's like when I went to England, I was watching Lee Beachell, who was from world number 1, James Wilstrop, playing with them on a daily basis. And that helped me immensely to be the player I am today. So I think it all put together, Egypt has a very, very good kind of environment, which gives you the best possible opportunity to realize the potential that you have. And they have a lot of potential for sure, and they're realizing it to the best of their abilities today.
It's fascinating, that Egypt situation of their dominance. And you mentioned it, you've touched on it there, obviously that idea that success breeds success, which brings me back to India, because India, and we talked about this with Sindhu, and we talk about it a lot. Anubhav does great work with our shows on One Play Sports India. I know it's a reoccurring theme. India is right for a sport other than cricket to really be dominated by India. We know you've got the passion for sports. Maybe the facilities not as great as they could be, but I think that's certainly improved in my experience visiting India over the last decade. You strike me, Saurav, as someone that is tailor-made for sporting administration when you eventually do hang the racket up, which let's hope is still a fair few years away. What 3 things would you change about, you can spread it out to racket sports maybe, not just squash, but squash in particular. What 3 things would you change to try and put India on a path to being where Egypt are now?
I think for starters, I think we need to get it to the grassroots a little bit more through the schools. I think sport in schools is not as widespread as it should be. It's not just squash. I think sports in general, I think they need to be a little bit more embedded into kind of the school curriculum, so to say, to get more kids involved from a very early age and do the talent identification through that. I think that is very important. I think facilities that we have, I've always believed that facilities don't make champions, mindsets do. So you have facilities around the world which probably aren't the best in the world, but they still produce world champions. I think it's more about the environment in which the facility exists. And I think the environments that we have around facilities in India are not tailor-made to produce world champions today. In some cases, they are. So, for example, badminton probably is moving towards that kind of degree of environment where they can produce world champions through a system rather than individual kind of offshoots, so to say. So I think creating a system through expertise of the coaches, through kind of creating a culture of top players playing with each other, those things put together create that environment. And I think that's something that needs to improve. And finally, I think we need to look at instilling a belief in players across sports that they are good enough to be world champions. I think as people, Indians traditionally have been, people who kind of want to downplay what their dreams and dreams and beliefs are. They're almost embarrassed to kind of think that, oh, we can be world champion. I think that is changing. You can see that even in the cricket, for example. Virat Kohli's team today is very different in terms of the belief that they show outwardly compared to even a team which was led by Saurav Ganguly like about 15 years back. So I think that change is happening on the level of society. And once that happens, I think the belief will create a lot more champions and take us to the next level. So hopefully these three things will continue to progress over the next few years. And then, yes, of course, when I finish, I do want to get into helping players realize their potential and give back to my sport as well as sport in general in India to make India a superpower in sport, because we definitely have the talent. It's about guiding it in the right way.
Well, you talk about the sport as well as you play it. It's fascinating to listen to you, Saurav. We've obviously got Joshna Chinappa in the ladies' world squash, not exactly emulating you, but she's working her way there. For those of people watching in India, can you throw some names at me, some youngsters coming through in Indian squash that you think are on the right path to emulate you and your top 10 success?
I mean, look, there are a few boys and girls behind Deepika and Joshna who are already playing on the senior ranks. So on the boys' side, there's Mahesh Mangaonkar and Ramit Tandon and Vikram Malhotra, who are probably leading the queue at this point in time. In the girls, there's Tanvi Khanna and Sunena Kuravela. Deepika Pallikal Karthik obviously has done very well, but she's on a bit of a break right now. But hopefully she will come back. But I think the two people that I would probably kind of pinpoint who are coming through the juniors right now and who I think probably have the most potential would be on the girls' side. There's a girl called Aishwarya Khoobchandani. I think she is someone who has a lot of potential. She has everything in her kind of arsenal to really, really break into the top levels of sport on the squash rankings. I think she could do better than everyone that has come before her, as long as she puts her mind to it, trains well, is guided properly. On the boys' side, there's a boy named Veer Chotrani. His father was actually a national champion before, so he has pedigree in that sense. But I think he has a lot of talent, but also he is obsessed about the sport. He is a walking, talking encyclopedia of the sport. Like, he tells me scores of my matches which I played like 7 or 8 years back, which I don't remember properly. So he, that is very important. That the passion that he has, I think that's going to take him a long way. And he's studying at Cornell right now, and he's training with David Palmer there. So he's under the right kind of tutelage to extract whatever he has in him. So hopefully, in the years to come, these two will realize their potential and help take Indian squash further.
Well, it sounds like the future is in good hands, particularly if you're helping them along the way as well. You're 33. Now, in squash terms, it's not exactly veteran status, but you are getting there. Happy birthday, by the way, 34, I know, on August the 10th. How much longer do you think you can go on? You're still competing. When you last played in March at Canary Wharf, you made the quarterfinals. That pesky El Sharbagi got the better of you, the world #1. But how many more years do you see yourself competing at the very top level?
I mean, to be honest, I don't want to put a number on it because what I've done basically ever since I've turned 30 is that every summer I sit down first with myself and then with my coaching team and discuss whether I have the hunger to to train super hard physically, and also the ability to mentally push myself, because at top level that's equally important. And happily for me, it's been a positive yes every summer. I feel the same way right now. So I'm going to keep going till that happens. Of course, playing in 22 for the Commonwealth Games and the Asian Games is a target. So I hopefully want to do that. But I think for me right now, it's, I've made 10 in the world. I'm 13 in the world right now. It's about kind of doing the best I can to, get higher up. I have dreams ever since I was a kid. The dream has always been to be world number one. The belief necessarily hasn't been there completely, maybe till about, 2.5 years back, where I thought that, okay, I genuinely do have a shot. If I put, two and two together consistently, then I can, really, really make it. And, even now during this time, I'm working on small things, trying to make small marginal gains, which will hopefully add up to me being really up there with the very best and challenging for that top spot and the top titles. So that's what I'm kind of working towards. The day I feel I can't, work towards that, or I feel like I'm not physically or mentally capable of competing at that level, I'm going to say thank you very much. It's been a great ride, but it's time for me. So that's the way I am. If I want to do something, I want to do it with excellence, the best I can, realize every last kind of drop of my potential. And when I feel that potential is done, or I don't have anything else left in me to do anymore, then I'm going to do something else. So hopefully it's still a few years away.
Well, let's hope so, Saurav. Very quickly, because listen, we've been talking about half an hour. You're a great talker. The time has flown. The latest is with squash, because it's deemed a high-risk sport because of the confined space. You have no planned return date. World Squash are holding back on giving you a return date at the moment. Is that still the case?
Yeah, they've not given a final kind of date. They've kind of told us that, we're looking at like September, October, looking at how we can make it as secure as we can. I think all of us realize that eliminating the risk of COVID-19 is impossible at this point in time, especially without a vaccine in place. So it's a question of minimizing the risk to an extent which is acceptable. I think we are supposed to get some sort of clarity over the next week, 2 weeks, to kind of tell us where and when the events are going to happen, and what are the kind of operating procedures that are going to be in place, and how we're going to travel. But at the same time, it's difficult. Like right now, people can travel from, let's say, England, but India, there is no international travel allowed. So even if there was a tournament in August, for example, like I couldn't go even if I wanted to take the risk. So I think it's a difficult decision for any sporting body to make at this point in time. And, they're trying to be as flexible to the situation, and hopefully, you're going to get it right. And you can only say that in hindsight. They're trying to do the best they can, and we are trying to support them the best we can as players. So hopefully we will get something soon on the radar.
Yeah, well, we're big fans of squash here at One Play Sports, so we'll keep an eye on that closely. Listen, you've been very good giving us your time today, but I'm going to do to you what I did with Sindhu. 5 either-or questions before I let you go, Saurav. Right, you ready? Either or.
Right. Yeah.
Asia or Europe?
Europe,
because you train in Pontefract, so that's understandable. Now, a little birdie tells me that your mum makes a very good chocolate pudding, so I'm going to say this. Michelin-starred restaurant or your mum's Marie biscuit chocolate pudding? I think I know the answer to this one.
Mary biscuit chocolate pudding. That's my favorite dessert in the world.
Boast or drop shot?
Drop shot.
Drop shot. World number 1 or Olympic champion?
Olympic champion.
Olympic champion. And finally, I think I know the answer to this one as well, being such a measured young man as you are, Netflix or nightclub?
Oh, Netflix at this time in my life, nightclub 10 years back.
Yes, your wife, I'm sure, will be delighted to hear the answer to that one now. Listen, Saurav, it's been an absolute delight. Stay safe. Give our best wishes to everyone there in West Bengal. And I'm hoping the next time we speak to you via Zoom, it will be after winning the first tournament when the World Squash Tour returns. Take care, Saurav. All the best.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Take care. Stay safe.
Brilliant stuff.
Bye.
Many thanks to Saurav Ghosal there, the top-ranked Indian squash player, the first Indian to break into the top 10. What a great talk he is. 33, but still got plenty of life in him, and we look forward to following his career very closely post-COVID.